If you're a driven, active person who wants to reach and pursue a higher quality life with some ambition, then guess what? This podcast is for you. This is the Driven Athlete Podcast. What's up, y'all? It's your man, Dr. Kyle. Welcome back to the Driven Athlete Podcast. We've got a really cool guest with us, Dr. Michael Herring. Dr. Mike, right?
Yes, that's close enough.
Thanks for joining us, sharing some of your insights, some of your knowledge base and stuff. So thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
Cool, man. So tell us more about your education background.
Sure.
Where you went to school.
Yeah.
What you're doing now.
Yeah. So I got my Bachelor of Science degree from St. Michael's College. It's in northwestern Vermont, Colchester, Vermont.
Okay.
Biology, focused on chemistry and biochemistry. From there, I did a couple of years of cardiovascular research in Los Angeles.
Okay. So you went from Vermont to LA.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
After that, spent 7 years in Chicago, getting my MD from Rush Medical College and internal medicine residency from Rush University Medical Center.
Cool.
And after that, spent a couple of years in Nashville at Vanderbilt as an attending. And now I find myself in South Florida.
Cool.
Combining all of the stuff that I like about medicine and, frankly, fitness.
Yeah. That's cool. And that's a great blend. You know, I mean, it's a great, you can provide great insights to clientele and people and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a necessary blend.
Yeah, totally. How'd you like Vanderbilt?
My experience in Nashville was a lot of, I'm not sure about it as far as a place to live, right? There's a lot of, classically bachelorette parties and, I like country music. I like, live music, but it's, I don't like staying out that late. I like to go to bed because I got stuff to do in the morning.
Yeah.
So
it's the hub for bachelorette parties, I feel like.
Yeah, there's a lot of it there. And
Austin, Nashville.
Yeah, I chose to go to sleep before dealing with any of that stuff. So.
Yeah. What's the street that is like the big Broadway Street?
Yeah.
It has all like the country bars, live music.
Yeah. And what's interesting about those places is every single one of those live bands that nobody's ever heard of is outstanding. They're all so good. And it's really kind of sad from my standpoint, being a musician most of my life, not in any big way, but they are so good and they're so talented and they don't get large amounts of recognition.
Yeah.
And it's kind of depressing.
Super competitive.
Oh my God, it's insane.
What do you play musician wise?
I played guitar. I got my first guitar when I was 6.
Okay.
I was a competitive singer in high school.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a girl I dated was kind of convinced me to do it because I had a buddy who was a drummer and 2 other buddies that played, guitar and bass. And we kind of got together. And of course, this was like when I was 16, 17.
Yeah.
This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But a girl in my high school that I ended up dating for a bit convinced me to join the competitive singing scene, and I did.
Cool.
It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So you had like a little band, you guys playing gigs and stuff, and
as much as we could.
Carnivals,
birthday
parties.
More or less. Yeah. I mean, again, 16, 17, we're not doing much, but it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. My brother was in a little band like that. It was friends in middle school and early high school.
Yeah.
And they did little gigs and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were pretty good,
Yeah, better than, your average 16-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
But your average 16-year-old doesn't do anything
that. So. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So what brought you then from Nashville to Southeast Florida?
Yeah, my wife and I actually moved to Nashville because we wanted to be between my parents and her parents. Her parents live in Western Michigan. My parents are down here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was a 2.5-hour drive to her parents when we lived in Chicago. And it was a 2.5-hour flight from my folks from here up to Chicago.
Yeah.
So we decided to move right in between. And it turned out that it became an 8-hour drive for her parents to come see us or for us to go there, and an 8.5-hour travel day for my parents to come see us because there's no direct flight from here to Nashville. So we made the situation worse.
Got a great idea. Let's go halfway.
Yeah. And we thought that, incorrectly, we thought that moving south, we would kind of get away with no winters. But, it still snows, it still ices, and
it's cold.
The decision was, whose family do we move closer to?
Yeah.
Do we want to be in Michigan around where my wife grew up, or do we want to go to Florida where it's never cold?
Yeah.
And I personally don't care either way.
Yeah.
There's more hockey in Michigan.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm a hockey player.
Oh, yeah?
But I don't have to deal with snow here.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So
it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, hockey's not really a thing, at least from my perspective
So
here.
my next door neighbor actually plays on his high school hockey team.
Oh, really?
And it's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
there's plenty of hockey around here. It's just not what you think of when you think of South Florida.
Yeah, for sure. So then you came down here, and you're internal medicine.
Yes.
Residencies completed, intendings, all that stuff done.
Yeah.
And now, where do you work now? Like, what's your role now?
I combine all of that stuff to do a lot of, with my medical practice, it's combined with utilization review, consulting stuff, and actually taking on clients for lifestyle discussions and coaching and like a lot of very hands-on stuff. The things that you kind of miss from a primary care office that we would like to tell you to do, even though we have 15 minutes before, somebody bangs on the door to tells us, get out, go to see the next one.
Yeah.
And I kind of got really sick of that really fast. And I came down to Florida thinking I was going to take a break from direct primary care. And I was doing really well. And then I hurt my leg, so I couldn't walk for 6 weeks.
Hence come seeing us.
Hence being here.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of turned into, okay, well, if I'm just going to spend time recovering, I might as well make it productive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've been doing since.
That's cool. That's awesome. So you're seeing one-on-one clients.
Yep.
Like coaching, as in like you have these health issues going on.
Yeah.
So then do you have your own like medical practice and like also fitness, nutrition?
It's mostly the fitness and nutrition side with my medical background. So it's not so much I am their doctor.
Yeah.
It is I know the things that their doctor knows, but I also know a bit more.
Yeah. You're a health coach.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what happened to your knee?
So I tore
Because Dr. Peter's been working with you. He knows your whole story.
a lot.
But share more what happened.
So about 3 years ago, and this is recently that my wife found this video, I was walking out of our gym in Chicago, and I told her, something's wrong with my right knee. I don't know what it is. And it had been bothering me on and off for a long time. I did a box jump of 24 inches, something that I had done 1,000 times before training for hockey. And my right quadricep tendon tore completely off. So my kneecap was not anywhere near where it was supposed to be.
Yeah. It's like, this looks way different.
Yeah, this is bad. This is a huge snap. The adrenaline that happens immediately is very helpful with regards to pain control. And then when that dissipates, this is not comfortable. But the surgery the next day, and not being able to bend my knee for a bit more than a month, and learning how to walk again, and 5, almost 6 months out, I don't have a limp anymore.
You're good. Yeah, good.
And I've started jogging again, and I can do proper exercises and loads that are not where they were before the injury, but still getting there.
Yeah, for sure. And you've also had a history. I know you've been open about this stuff with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, 30 years in August.
Yeah.
So it's a long time.
How is that with navigating your own health and wellness, right? Because you want to lead from the front, right? With your patients, your clients that you work with.
Yeah.
You're in great shape. You work out a lot. Previous athlete, musician in the past. You have a lot of these skills and stuff, which is awesome. And then you want to, have your own health in check with your eating habits, nutrition, fitness, whatever. How you been navigating your own health? You're a busy professional at the same time, and also navigating type 1 diabetes.
I like to think of it as everybody has their own stuff to deal with. I'm not any more or less special because I have, type 1 diabetes and I can't control my blood sugar based on what my pancreas should be able to do. And now it's essentially, I have to use my brain to tell my insulin pump what insulin to give me based on what I eat. I actually have to take a couple steps to think about that.
Yeah.
There was a time in my life where I kind of ignored it, not entirely, but, wasn't super aggressive about it. Ended up gaining like 85 pounds, and my A1C was flirting with 9, which is not ideal. And then it was at that time when I moved to Los Angeles, and LA in particular had nothing to do with it, but it was an excuse for me to think to myself, I can't blame this on college, on my friends, on my social circle. I can blame it on nothing but myself. So I need to be a representation of what I want to be.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of it's a blessing and a curse. Right, depending on how you feel it.
Yeah. And that's a good way to look at it.
Sometimes being diabetic is not a lot of fun because sometimes you feel like crap.
Yeah.
But it gives me a good excuse to have to focus on myself.
What usually causes a downturn?
A whole host of things can cause all that stuff. I think the things that usually get me are when I'm eating and I'm not super careful about exactly what I've eaten as far as insulin dosing. Sometimes you forget. because sometimes you got stuff to do, and that happens. And then your blood sugar goes high,
Right.
and you feel like crap for a while until it comes back down, and then you still kind of feel like crap for a while. If you're overdoing the insulin or not kind of backing off after you've exercised, your blood sugar can go down really fast. And the hypoglycemic events or low blood sugar events will kill you before any real hyperglycemic events in the short term.
Gotcha.
Usually people with diabetes and complications from diabetes are high blood sugar for a long period of time on average. And that'll get you after a couple decades. But if it's, and of course, the higher the blood sugar, the faster it'll get you. But if you spend 20 minutes when your blood sugar is undetectable, that's not ideal.
Yeah. What about from a fitness standpoint, like working out?
It varies person to person. For me, I've noticed that when I work out, my blood sugar is a lot easier to control, as it could be insulin sensitivity. It could be increase in something called the GLUT4 receptor on the muscle tissue, which is an insulin independent mechanism to transport glucose. Or it could just be that I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
One way or the other, I don't know what it is. I kind of don't care. I have learned how to do that for myself, and one or more of those mixed in together could be the right answer. I don't really know.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What things do you feel like you're like, I definitely, this is not on the table for nutrition wise? Like I'm not going to eat this. Can't do it.
There's nothing that the only things that I refuse to eat are things that I genuinely don't like. The things that I don't like raw tomatoes. I don't know why. I just don't like them. That my Italian ancestors are rolling in their graves. But I don't like raw tomatoes, so I don't know what to tell you. And that's pretty much the only thing that I won't eat.
You just don't like it.
Yeah. And there are things that are more or less aligned with my health goals, my fitness goals, my ability to control my blood sugar.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that is firmly off the table ever.
Gotcha.
And I think that has to do with kind of the flexibility that I've developed over the last 12 years of my nutrition. Because for a brief period, I was like, I'm going to eat the same thing every single day because it's good for me. I was never the person that would under-season their food. I just that's not worth it. That's not really a life worth living, in my opinion. Yeah. But for a while, it was I'm not gonna eat this except for the times of the week when I'm supposed to eat this.
Yeah.
Like when I was losing my weight, it was Wednesday night. I would get a cheeseburger. That was just my Wednesday night. All of my other meals would be aligned with exactly my goals.
Yeah.
And after, this is almost a year. It became that, I'll just eat my normal meal. I don't need to go, walk down to wherever to get a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And it shaped me to kind of where I am now. And I kind of eat the same thing pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And if I want to go out with my wife and enjoy a nice dinner, or my folks are coming and they want me to make something, like I have no problem doing that, as long as as long as I'm paying attention, number one, and number two, as long as I know that I'm going to enjoy this time I have with my family, because I don't know how many more of these times I get. And just as long as I'm paying attention, I'm okay.
Just be mindful.
Exactly.
What suggestions would you make for other active people like yourself, type 1 diabetic, nutrition, fitness, exercise, and stuff? Like what suggestions would you make?
It depends on where somebody is. A lot of the stuff that I see on social media these days are just like fixated with all this biohacking stuff. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple is going to help everybody. Right. Most, if not everybody, could do well with getting more fruits and vegetables in their diet, making sure that they're getting good amounts of protein in their diet, especially if they're active and they're trying to build some muscle.
Right.
The RDA for protein is like not ideal if you're trying to get stronger.
Right.
It's fine if you're trying to stay alive, but it's not ideal if you're trying to get stronger. More fruits and vegetables, stopping scrolling on your phone for 3 or 4 hours before you're supposed to go to sleep is a huge one. Like even if it's 1 hour, that gets a lot of people. And then doing some form of exercise that is pushing you. Yeah. And it could be that you're already active and doing something. Okay, do it harder. Yeah. I don't care where you're starting from, right? You and I are a lot different than some 75-year-old who hasn't lifted weights since
gym class in 6th grade.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So wherever you are doing something that's a little bit more, I don't care if it's practicing getting out of your chair 10 times. Yeah. Right. Something that you can do that pushes you a little bit to become better is a great place to start. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I totally agree. Like, I feel like I've heard that a ton of like keeping it simple. Like it usually always boils down to something of like, if you just stick to one thing, exactly.
that, there's been proven.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
do all these other complicated things.
Yeah.
You just do that,
Unfortunately,
The
there's
boring
not a lot of money
things.
in it.
Right, exactly, yeah.
There's not a lot of money in saying, hey, eat fruits and vegetables, get your protein in, make sure you get good sleep, do your stress reduction, whatever that might happen to be, and exercise.
And exercise a little bit.
That's,
Yeah.
full stop. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Once you're at the top 0.001% of bodybuilders, you don't really need much more than that.
Yeah. It's like, cool. But what about the biohacking stuff?
Right, exactly. The stuff that I see, I can't respond to it on social media just because by the time my brain has uncramped and I've gotten to a place where I'm no longer angry, then by that time it's already passed, right? Social media happens very quickly.
Yeah.
And it just it blows my mind that people with this amount of stage presence and just enough knowledge to be kind of close will sell people on things that are just kind of false.
Yeah.
Or things that are reasonable, but for the wrong reasons.
Right.
It's like, on the math tests on, a standardized test, you get something close to one of the answers on the multiple choice and you pick the multiple choice answer that's closest and you get it right. Like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you got it right.
Right.
Like,
you're close.
Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah. And a little fortunate maybe.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. Well, what got you into medicine to begin with? Like, what might in healthcare to begin with?
I always loved science. It was hard between, the biological science and medicine versus things like physics, because I always loved math too. So it was kind of a toss up for a while. Being a type 1 diabetic since I was 6, I was always a patient, right? I always had great, doctors to kind of look up to. And, these are people that know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I really liked knowing just how the body works, mostly. And the more you get into it, the more you realize, oh my God, it takes dozens of lifetimes to understand all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty fascinating.
It's wild. And you have people like oncologists who have their I hate to pick on oncologists but it's one of those things that I was just never that good at as far as my medical training is concerned. It's just one of the things that just got to me. They do so much stuff that's so focused on such little nuanced things, and they have so many words that unless you're an oncologist, you've never seen before.
Right.
And that's just the one thing they focus on. And then you move to endocrinology, and it's a completely different world. And these are people who are extraordinarily intelligent, that they devote their entire lives to this stuff.
Right.
And you get to a point where it's like, yeah, I want to know all that stuff. And one of the reasons I chose internal medicine is that I get to know a lot about all that stuff. I know less oncology than the oncologists do.
Right.
But I probably know more cardiology than all the oncologists do.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of the same thing with all the specialties that way.
That's cool. So definitely a good exposure of a lot of things.
Yeah, I like knowing a lot about a lot of stuff.
That's cool.
My wife yells at me how the hell do you know all this stuff? I don't know. I read it somewhere and it just stuck. I don't know. This is what I like to do.
That's cool. What things are you researching or delving into now?
A lot of it is just the health and longevity stuff that is popping up all the time. I see this guy, I think his name is Brian Johnson, who I think he sold his a tech company, and he spends $2 million a year trying to slow his chronological age down to almost nothing. And he does it in a very interesting fashion in that it's very him specific. And, he doesn't suggest that everybody must do what he does. Because I kind of like that about him.
Yeah.
He's this is what I do. I think a lot of people could zoom out and think of it in broad terms and apply it to themselves, but not everybody should do this. And I appreciate that about him. And it's the stuff is pretty interesting to me anyway. When you kind of boil it down, it's just do the simple stuff.
Right.
And that's where most people fail, is that they don't do the simple stuff either well enough or for long enough. Yeah. It's an attention span thing that I've struggled with too, and everybody does.
Or they'll just not really seeing the results and reward yet. Mm-hmm. And then either been oh, well, it's not working, right? Yeah. Or we're getting bored with it.
Right. And when it comes to fat loss, it's, you kind of wake up and then all of a sudden decide to make a change. But you have to remember that when I gained all of my weight, it didn't happen in the afternoon that I realized, oh crap, what am I going to do now? It happened over the course of the couple of years, right? But paying attention in the other direction is not ideal.
Yeah.
not a lot of fun.
Right.
It's ideal at the other side of it.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be nearly as miserable as people think it's going to be.
Right.
And that's usually, adherence and kind of not the long-term goals is a problem. And being kind to yourself while you're in it is also something that a lot of people lack.
A little self-grace.
Yeah. Like your body weight can jump 2 or 3% normally.
Right.
Water, salt, sugar intake has all sorts of stuff to do with it. And people will see that on the scale and be like, oh my God, I failed. So now I'm just going to give up.
It's all done.
Yeah, it's all done.
Momentum's gone.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a linear progression.
Yeah.
Like maybe week over week, month over month, sure. But day after day, absolutely not.
Right. I think that's a huge, for myself, lots of people that we've talked with and patients we've worked with and clients and stuff, the self-grace for sure.
Oh my God.
They're like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like it takes one step to get back on track again.
Exactly.
Like just continue where you're going. You're going to be way off tangent, of course, for longer, but
there's a concept in addiction medicine that a psychiatrist taught me, and I kind of had been doing this for a while, but I didn't have a name for it. And there's a difference between lapse, relapse, and collapse. A lapse is like, okay, well, I didn't do exactly what I was supposed to be doing, for this one meal or this one, experience or activity. Okay, tomorrow I will get back on track and I will do what I'm supposed to be doing. A collapse is, or I'm sorry, a relapse is, okay, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I haven't been doing it for a while. I would like to start doing it, but I for some reason I just can't.
Yeah.
And then a collapse is saying, screw it, I'm done.
I'm out.
I'm out.
Right.
F this. Lapsing, I think, is necessary to maintain your own sanity. It'd be better if it's planned lapses, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But lapse, it's fine. You have to be a person. You have to enjoy your time. And if it's
you're a robot otherwise.
Oh my gosh! And if you're gonna sit here and refuse to have a piece of your kid's birthday cake at their 5th birthday party, like for the love of God, I don't want to spend any time with you.
Relax. Yeah. So what does a planned lapse look like? Cheat meals, rest day for workouts.
I mean, it could be anything. I don't like the term cheat meals because
honestly, I really don't either. That's just a catchphrase.
Yeah, and it's like a you're not really cheating on anything. It's like how aligned with this how aligned is this meal with your plans, right? If you want to be in a calorie surplus for a day and you're trying to lose fat, cool. Like one day in one small calorie surplus is not going to ruin any sort of progress in the long term. Remember, it's like one day out of months and years and for the rest of your life. That's okay. As long as it's an average of a calorie deficit, you'll get to where you want to be more or less and it'll be fine.
Yeah. I think what I heard that too is like, I try to tell myself, it's like one meal isn't going to get me fat. And one workout isn't going to be like swollen jacked.
Right. I ate a salad yesterday. Where's my 6-pack today? It's like, well, unfortunately, bummer. Right.
But it makes me feel better because I'm like, man, so many funny memes and stuff. Instagram memes and fail videos, they're my vice for sure. I'll be like laughing. My wife's like, what happened? I'm like, oh, it's just Instagram. She's like, again.
Yeah.
But like you have one meal, and like you just feel like a slob,
I mean, it also depends on what kind of a delta it is from your norm, right? If you're going from eating chicken salads constantly, which sounds suboptimal at baseline, but if you're going from eating only chicken salads to having 6 Big Macs, like you're going to feel like crap. Who's not going to feel like crap, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to go and go out to dinner with your friends to a really nice barbecue spot and get a nice barbecue and like enjoy your time with your friends, because how many of those are you going to experience? You have to be a person too.
Yeah.
Like you have to find your own balance, and that balance will change over time.
Yeah.
But be a person.
Yeah.
Like my folks are in their late 60s and early 70s. How many more dinners am I going to get to have with them? I'm going to choose to enjoy it in a reasonable fashion. Doesn't mean you have to be a glutton every time you go.
Yeah.
But if they want to go out to dinner, let's go out to dinner.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm not going to pack Tupperware with plain chicken and rice.
And if that's part of your goal and you're training for a competition and that's what you want to do, fine. There's
this bodybuilder guy that was following that. He was just talking about his day in and day out, and he's like, like up to competition, his friends would go out. He'd go out with him. Yeah. He would just have water. Yeah. But he would bring his Tupperware. He said, I would go to my car, be like, I'm going to the bathroom, I'll be right back. He'd be gone for like 10 minutes. He'd like scarf down his chicken and rice, come back to the table, have more water. And I was like, man, that's okay. You're a competitor. You're like, this is like 0.001, bodybuilder, like you were saying. This is way different. But I was like, that's okay. And also right before competition, understandable. Yeah. But I'm not going to be the guy doing that at dinner.
Right. It's like the guy who's like has a marathon tomorrow and it's carbo loading, right? Yeah. Like, okay, you're going to eat differently than your family there as they go to support you. That's okay. Like you can do that. That's not, but it's also not what everybody should be doing on a regular basis.
Right. Or expect themselves to
Exactly. Or like put themselves under that amount of pressure.
Right.
Like, no, most of us just need to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
And wherever that little bit is, that's what we should go for.
Yeah.
Right. Like you and I are different than my mother, who is, almost 69 years old. Like we can all be a little bit better, but her a little bit better is different than ours.
It's a different definition for sure.
Exactly.
So what does your workout routines look like right now? What's your sleep schedule look like too?
Yeah, I'm doing PT exercises most days. Some days are right.
I'm gonna tell Peter.
Some days are much more intense than others, and those more intense days get to be at this stage in recovery, some a little bit more depressing than others. I strength train 5 days a week. I go on at least one long walk every day. As far as cardio is concerned, I have been working in jumping rope and running now that I can. I have been working on like the assault bike because I can now. And it's like it's been fascinating realizing like, you know what, I didn't like doing this before, and then it was stripped from me and I couldn't. So now I'm going to do it because I can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think part of that's like in life is like necessary,
Yeah.
The suffrage, or this is getting deep, but like the suffrage, because then you can't appreciate things when they are good. And
exactly.
If taken away, then it's like, I didn't realize how much. Now I want to go back and do that.
Right.
Stuff,
Exactly. Like when I was an athlete, it was, I could just kind of do I could do whatever I wanted to. And the only things that I had responsibilities to do were I needed to study to keep my grades up. Yeah. I needed to train for hockey, and I needed to sleep. And, when I was in high school playing junior hockey, I would fall asleep at my desk doing my homework with my, my dinner very cold from the night before. And I'd wake up like, oh, well, here we go. And then, I got to the point in my life where I couldn't bend down to tie my shoes without holding my breath. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not okay. I need to change this. And that was, step one. And now that I can jog again, I still don't love it. It's not my favorite thing in the world. Yeah. But now I can appreciate being able to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Just like, walking upstairs.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that for, I don't know how many months.
Yeah.
That was a long time. Man.
Probably at least 3 months.
Yeah, at least. And it was staggering. And it's like, oh my God, there's some people that just can't walk upstairs full stop. It's like, oh yeah, no, I took this for granted.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I took this for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. What's like your recommendations? So like what for clients that you work with? Yeah. What are the two most common questions people usually ask first? And then what are like the recommendations you usually have?
Yeah. It depends on the client. It's a lot of people that I've worked with have this like hyper focus on the things that are not terribly important, or they try to overcomplicate things that are important.
To keep it simple again.
Water intake is a big one that I get questions about. And, they want to use some formula based on body weight and ideal body weight. It's like, no, like your kidneys are pretty bright. And urine's a waste product. So if it's clear, you're good. If it's straw colored, you're fine. There's supposed to be stuff in your urine. Yeah. If it's dark yellow or brown, have a glass of water.
Yeah.
That's probably all you really need.
Yeah.
If you're doing some, something that's more advanced and that's not, my scope, then maybe you need to change something about that. But that's all you really need.
I've had another interesting opinion on that too. I'm in the same boat. I'm like, if I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink some more.
Sure.
If I feel like my urine coloration is a little bit different, definitely going to have some more water, like have a little drink, we're good. But like, I got to have a full gallon every day, It's like actually just pee a lot more, number one. So it's interrupting your day.
Sure.
It's annoying. And then you're also diluting like your system. If you're doing supplements or nutrition and stuff like that, it's diluting the system bioavailability. And it's just also making that like less potent,
Yeah. Everything has to go in your bloodstream eventually. And whatever your kidneys see, they will get rid of the extra stuff. The water intake for a handful of people that I've worked with in the past was effectively zero. And when they get it to something more reasonable throughout the course of the day, maybe it's like 2 liters of water a day, right? I'm not going to go from they have a cup of coffee and then don't drink anything until the next cup of coffee. Like I'm not interested in having that person go from 0 to 100, right? Yeah. But like something more, they'll notice they're going to pee more, and then that kind of goes away when their body gets used to it. It's like, oh, I have water I can use now, right? When you get to the point where, is it going to dilute, supplementation in your
what have you heard on that?
I don't know is the short answer. The long answer is probably not. Everything has to go through your liver and kidneys anyway, and whatever it is, you'll digest it, and whatever is extra, you get rid of. And it makes intuitive sense to me, but I just don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. What do people usually ask for? Like, okay, cool. What's the first thing then you recommend from a supplement standpoint?
So there are, and I do get that a lot. It's if you can't eat properly, I don't care about what your supplements are. If you're not even close, I kind of don't care what your supplements are, right?
So fix that first.
Yeah, like fix the, and it doesn't have to be perfect with your nutrition, but like get it kind of in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Right. If it's 3 meals a day of fast food, like I don't want to hear about your supplement stack.
Yeah.
Like I don't care. It's not doing anything. Right. Like supplements are to supplement an already good practices.
Yeah.
So if you are somebody who is at 95%, eating mostly whole foods, plenty of fruits and vegetables, good lean cuts of protein, good healthy fats, and you want to get your protein intake up a little bit because you kind of struggle in that fashion, great. Protein supplement would be fine.
Yeah.
But until you're there, like I don't really care.
Yeah.
Creatine, I think, has been getting a lot of good press and a lot of good studies with regards to neural health. So I think that's kind of something to kind of take a look at.
Yeah.
I don't think people should just start taking creatine just for the hell of it. But more research is necessary, and maybe it will be one of those things. I don't know.
It's interesting. I know from what I've looked at or been exposed to, it seems like creatine's one of the most well-studied supplements.
Second only to caffeine.
Oh, interesting. Okay, There you go. And it's like safe.
Oh yeah. So people get creatine and creatinine mixed up a lot, and they think they're the same word. And creatinine is the kind of the poor man's measure of kidney function, and it's also a secondary indicator of muscle turnover. So people will think, well, you're taking creatine, you don't want your creatine to go up. It's like, no, you're taking creatine, it won't make your creatinine go up.
Interesting. Okay.
And if you have healthy kidneys already, having 5 grams of creatine a day is not going to hurt you.
Yeah. I have read or been exposed to some research on the neural development, their cognitive and neural protective type of elements that come with creatine for elderly patients and Alzheimer's.
Yep.
Or degenerative changes in the brain.
Yeah.
Also like combat sports like fighting and boxing.
Yeah, that stuff, as far as I'm concerned, is still kind of in its infancy, but it's like exceptionally promising.
Yeah.
Like people don't tend to get excited about it at this stage unless it's like really suggestive of, hey, there might be something here.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's awesome. I know also too, I feel like some people respond and are sensitive to certain supplements more than others. I know personally, like I feel like I react really well with creatine and then whey protein.
Sure.
I try to do the whey protein isolate. I feel like less bloated if I'm taking the isolate versus not. But I would imagine then some of the clients you see, same kind of thing of like, I did that, it really help, or like, I did it for like a good amount of time, a sample size to be like, make a good judgment call.
Yeah. And you have to kind of ease into all of it, right? There's, no matter what you go take a look and see, like with regards to caffeine, for example, like there's it's like 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is like optimal for performance in the weight room. For a 100 kilogram person, that's a lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
Right? Like between 300 and 600 milligrams of caffeine.
And how much per cup of coffee on average? Just for reference.
100, 150, 150 maybe.
Oh,
depends on the cup of coffee, depends on the size. Like that gets to be a lot of caffeine all at once.
It could be 5 to 6 cups of coffee.
And some people
before you work out.
Yeah, and some people are super sensitive and some people aren't. Yeah. Right? So it's like, if you want to have a cup of coffee before you work out, great, go for it. Like I don't really have a problem with it.
What are some of the other things you've seen on caffeine? Like I didn't know. That's awesome. I didn't know it's the most well studied.
It can blunt appetite. In my personal experience, it doesn't do a lot of blunting of appetite.
For me, it doesn't. But
that's one of the things that it could do. Too much of it can send people into AFib if you're not careful.
It's true,
right?
Yeah.
It's like, so with every gift there's a curse, and much like everything else, the devil's in the dosage.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. The devil's, I like that. The devil's in the dosage. The stimulant, right? Caffeine's a stimulant. Yes. Other than that, that's the main benefit. That's the main thing still studied. Yeah. Like, oh, we didn't know. Ozempic also makes you help lose weight, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing with like Ozempic's been getting a lot of positive and negative press. And
what are your thoughts on that? Zemping.
Is
the word
is that what they're calling it? Zemping?
Everyone in Hollywood zemping.
Oh boy,
I heard.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So like I said earlier, it depends. It's the GLP-1 agonists are great for people with type 2 diabetes who need to lose some weight. Simultaneously, these drugs were studied in people who are also doing diet and exercise counseling at the same time.
Right.
You've got guys who are giants in this kind of health and longevity space, like Peter Attila, who talks about you're going to lose muscle and bone mass, and that's not ideal. It's like that is 100% true.
With Ozempic.
With Ozempic, if you are not doing some form of strength training and organizing your nutrition.
Interesting.
Right. So if you just sit
it helps facilitate breakdown, bone mineral density, and muscle tissue density.
Just like any other caloric deficit does, if you're not doing something.
Got it. Just because of the caloric deficit.
Yeah. I don't think that has anything to do with the GLP-1 agonism involved. Right.
Gotcha.
Essentially, when you eat something, signals go to your brain saying, "Hey, I'm full," and then you stop eating. Some people with type 2 diabetes who have a predilection for obesity, for a whole number of potential factors, that slows down or is not as robust as they would hope, leading to type 2 diabetes and all the terrible things that come with it decades down the line. If you're slowing how do I put this? If you're slowing the emptying of your stomach, you will get fuller faster. If you are amplifying the sound of your stomach telling you you're full, you will stop eating faster. That's the caloric deficit that people are aiming for. Just like any caloric deficit, you will wither away if you don't do anything about it at the same time, which is why people who are, trying to lose fat, like, for the love of God, please do strength training so you don't also lose muscle and so you also don't lose bone density.
Right.
It's just the caloric deficit that'll do it. These drugs were studied while strength training and while organizing your nutrition, and it's super important that people do those things. What they've also found is that the weight loss that people see with Ozempic, even though they lose muscle and bone mass, for longevity and general health purposes, it's still positive. So you can talk about how you're going to lose muscle mass and bone density all you want, and it's bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not ideal. But still, if you're somebody who's 400 pounds and you go down to 200 pounds, that's huge. Even if you're 400 pounds, you go to like 350, 375. That's big.
That's a massive.
That's a big amount of weight, and that is a net positive.
Yeah.
It's not the best net positive it could be if you were doing the other things too.
Yeah.
Which is why I feel so strongly about doing the other things too.
Yeah.
But it's still a net positive.
Yeah,
So it gets a lot of crap, and like anything you put in your body, there's always the potential for side effects.
Yeah, for sure.
These gastroparesis sorts of things. It's like, well, that's also kind of what it does. Like gastroparesis is just your stomach is not emptying itself. That's the purpose.
Yeah.
It slows that down, and unfortunately, if it stops entirely, that's not great. That doesn't happen very often.
Interesting. With some of the giants you were talking about in the health and longevity realm field, what other main takeaways have you heard from them?
Again, when you zoom out, it's doing the simple things right. I think there's a lot of really crazy stuff out there that has maybe like a theoretical practice at best, and it gets disappointing when people kind of cling to that because it's like it's new and exciting and it's different, but they still don't have the basics down.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of it, like putting the butter in your coffee, like that Dave Asprey guy. It's like, oh God Almighty. 99.9% of what comes out of Gary Brecka's mouth is like, it sounds sciencey and it sounds like he knows what he's talking about until there's like one phrase in the paragraph that makes me go, well, nope. Back the truck up. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they just say things that are wrong because they're appealing to authority. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is something that you've been taught, but it's been wrong the whole time. It's like, okay, where are your data?
Interesting. Something I was exposed to.
Yeah.
Oh my God, as a neuroscientist on Alzheimer's, and she did a TED Talk on the fountain of youth, and she came up with like the 6 main keys for the fountain of youth. And tell me this is what you mean by keeping simple, like keeping things simple, right?
Yeah.
Just go back to the basics,
Yeah.
right? And the 6 keys that she was talking about were just some kind of exercise and fitness, nutrition, which also looks like not alcohol and smoking, like huge impacts of like, those are the first things to cut first if you are. Quality sleep, stress management, meaningful relationships, and social engagement.
Yeah. I mean, I have no problems with any of those at all.
Is that along the same lines you were talking
It's
about?
exactly the same. You know, different people will need different levels of social interaction.
Yeah.
Different people will be able to handle different amounts of stress better than others. Just like everybody's ideal diet or most consistent diet will be a little bit different here and there.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're following the most general principles really, really well, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I think a really interesting one I took away from that was like, okay, got it. Eating, diet and exercise. Cool. Well, it's like, I like the word you're using, word nutrition a little better, just as the sound is like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think the word diet has kind of been a bad word because I don't like being on a diet because it suggests an end date, right? And this is something you're supposed to do until you're dead, right? And if you want to limit your calories because you want to lose a little bit of fat because you're going on a beach vacation in 3 months, cool, fine, right? But your diet is your nutrition. It's what you put in your body. It's how you fuel yourself. It's how you remain alive for a long period of time, and not just some arbitrary foods that you can and can't eat.
Right. It also suggest like taking things away or it's restrictive and that, well, I can't live the way I want to until this end date. And then I'll go back and do whatever I want to do.
Right. And people wonder why they yo-yo all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
You don't actually, I think one of my favorite studies, I wish I could remember like who wrote it and exactly what it said as far as like what I read from it, but it said something that I had known in myself, and my father actually had identified it in me before I even figured it out. Is they were like my father had pictures of me as I am more or less today, and as I was as my heaviest, and he said that that's not me, that's the guy that ate me, which because he and I have the humor of a 12-year-old boy, like that makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah. And then I thought to myself, I'm just not the same person that I was 12, 14 years ago when I was doing all the stuff that was not in line with, a long life.
Yeah.
And then you look at the people who have maintained significant weight loss for a long period of time, like over a year, that's the number one thing they say. It's like, I'm just a different person.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of makes a lot of sense. If you're somebody who is generally unhealthy and you want to become healthy and you will, do whatever it takes, you have to become a different person.
Yeah, totally.
You're probably going to lie to yourself for a while beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. But at some point, that lying to yourself becomes an effective way to do it.
To do the things.
Right.
Yeah. To the reality.
Yeah.
What I was going to say real quick, because I want to get back to that. I have a lot of interesting thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Of like the 6 fountain of youth aspects. The one that really got me, I was like, God, that makes total sense, is the stress management.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, like the meaningful, deep relationships and social engagement, it helps with purpose and fulfillment for sure. But the stress management, I was like, that makes total sense. Just people who are consistently, there are a lot of things going on, a lot of stressful stuff, kids, mortgage, business, all responsibilities, whatever, all those things. That's the one that got me. I was like, that makes total sense. It's like the silent killer, I feel like, that of elevated cortisol levels, I would assume. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Or whatever is elevated.
Yeah. I think the elevated...
Over a long period of time.
Yeah. I mean, elevated cortisol is Cushing's disease, right? That's like a buzzword frequently, right? You can be stressed and have high cortisol. That doesn't mean you have pathologically high cortisol, right? If you have high cortisol in response to a stressor, that's what should happen. Yeah. Right. If you have high cortisol when you're not supposed to have cortisol, that's when it's pathology.
Yeah. With somebody who doesn't have a pathology, they're always, a lot of stressors are coming into their life, and they have elevated cortisol, and then it doesn't have a chance to like decrease and then elevate it again, or just consistently going up and down very, very often. Have you seen any studies, research on that of like indicating heart issues in the future?
I mean, you could get theoretically you could have lots of health problems if you're consistently stressed. Yeah. A lot of those health problems from being consistently stressed have to do more with the lifestyle associated with it and not just the stress and just the cortisol, right? If you have something that is pathology, that's a different discussion. Right. But I think having high cortisol, quote unquote, and leading with lots of vague complaints that it's 2024. Most people are tired. Most people feel puffy every once in a while. Most people don't get enough sleep.
Right.
Most people are stressed out for one reason or the other. Like, welcome to being alive. Yeah. Like this is what being an adult is. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Welcome to being alive.
Right. And people will blame that on high cortisol, and then get their cortisol tested and like, oh my God, my cortisol's high. It's like, well, yeah, you got it tested at 4:00 in the afternoon and you didn't do an ACT or simulation test and all this good stuff that all these like mail order cortisol companies aren't actually testing properly, which are just an egregious waste of money, in my opinion. Not to get off too on a tangent, but but stress management is very important for everybody, and whatever that might happen to be. I don't care if it's like playing with your dog or making sure that you have a week every 6 months of just complete dissociation from your responsibilities, like going on vacation or whatever it is, or just like shutting your phone off for 20 minutes, for God's sake.
Yeah, seriously.
Whatever it might happen to be, there's almost infinite ways to figure it out.
So you're saying the stress, the cortisol level, people are getting stressed, cortisol levels get elevated, not a pathology, but it just maintains heightened elevated levels. But it's not the stress itself, it's the lifestyle that goes with it. What do you mean by that?
So cortisol by itself, and people forget this, is a catabolic hormone. It causes, when you're being chased by a lion, you need to break down all the energy stores you have so that you can run away from the lion, right? And for the majority of people, what'll happen after that is a compensatory reaction, saying like, oh my God, I used all of this energy. I need to, go eat it back. And a lot of people will eat it back. It's like stress eating, for example, is a big one. There's a reasonable sized minority that doesn't happen to. I don't know why. And a lot of people who stress eat are very jealous of it, but I don't know why. We're not being chased by lions anytime soon.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And the compensatory mechanism is usually what is more damaging than the actual cortisol itself. Not to say that having elevated cortisol for a long period of time is good for you. It's not.
Right.
But these are normal reactions that are being compensated for without paying appropriate attention and taking a step back and understanding, okay, this is actually what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. You can't overeat unless you actually overeat.
Yeah.
For example, right? A lot of the hormonal inputs you get are going to make it really, really hard to not do that.
Right.
But just knowing that it's a potential and it's a possibility and this is why it's happening can give you a little bit of power back.
Over that,
even though it may feel like you still don't have that much power, maybe you stop a little bit sooner.
Right.
But just understanding that, people talk about hormones all the time and wanting to fix them, and it's just like, oh, okay, go see your endocrinologist for the love of God.
Yeah.
Like don't talk to somebody who has holistic coach in their bio, like, for my God.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that could be stacked against you, but the basics are still all the same.
Interesting. Really good point, or thing we're talking about, the you're a different person now than you were, right? I'm a different person than I was in high school, different than I was in college, whatever, of course. And I feel like that's a big deterrent for a lot of people of like, they're trying to change their lifestyle. They want to get stronger, be exercise, and eat in a way that would be looked upon as like, wow, they eat really healthy, right? Well, but that's not me though. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a healthy person, you know? So then they kind of, it's easier, or it makes it more difficult for them to stay consistent with the thing they're doing, because they're like, that's not really me though, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, the other hard part about that is if you keep the same location that you're at, you don't change your circumstances or like the actual location that you're at, it's easier for you to fall back into that same belief of like, I'll never be that. That's not really me though. You know, I'm not healthy. Yeah. It's like, you can be, just decide today. Yeah. A really great way to make that even better is like, I don't want to say like leave where you're at, but if you change your environment, it's a lot easier to become like a new person and like grow into that new identity. I guess.
When I moved from Colchester, Vermont to downtown Los Angeles, I was 3,500 miles away from anybody that I knew. Yeah. And I had literally no excuses other than, oh, this is all me. Yeah. And my environment was entirely different. And I swear to God, right when I figured that out, I went on Amazon and bought like a 50-pound bag of rice because that was going to be my carb source. And it was like $9, and which is fantastic because I was making no money.
Yeah, for sure.
and that was just like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm just going to become this person. And if you are someone who wants to be healthier and you just said, well, that's not me, then it's never going to be you. Right. If you want to do something, cool. Right. But if you're unwilling to go and do it, nothing's going to happen. Yeah,
of course. I like what you were saying though, is like just pretend and then just like lie to yourself. Like, oh, what would somebody pretending like as if like, what would then somebody who is very active and healthy, what would they do? I'm just going to do that on purpose. I'm just going to pretend then, and I'll be that person.
Right.
Do that long enough, and those habitual lifestyle changes trickle in over time.
Yeah.
And it's like, what would somebody with this character trait do?
It depends on what you want to attack for somebody who's already kind of doing well. For example, like I struggle with getting to sleep on time. I have an alarm set that says, hey, go to bed.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes I shut that alarm off because I'm in bed sooner. Sometimes that spooks me because I'm doing something and I've lost track of time.
Right.
And it says, hey, go to bed for the love of God. Now, of course, I have my dogs that have to go out to pee between 9 and 9:30 every night, and they will remind me. Yeah. So that's step number one. But if something happens and I'm just doing stuff and it gets out of hand, there's an alarm that's set.
Yeah, I like that.
And I'm not, it seems too simple and too stupid to do anything, right? But that's often what the things that work do. Yeah. I spent so much time only buying food that aligned properly with my lifestyle that it's like, oh, well, if you just don't buy it, you can't eat it. No, that's true. Yeah, if I don't have it in my house, I can't eat it, right? And of course, Facts. I'm it's a little bit of a hyperbole, but doing simple stuff to organize your lifestyle in the direction you want it. I don't care like how embarrassing or ego bruising it is. Like, do it. Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. Like somebody's going to give you a hard time for getting a proper night's sleep every night. Right. Those are people you don't want to talk to anyway.
Right, exactly. I think I was going to say part of like the environment change is doing some kind of an analysis or reflection on like, if I were to do this, what people would be like, why? And then what people would be like, sick, high five, awesome, love it, I
mean, one of my, a couple of my best friends now versus then, like I still have some very close friends from back when I was a bigger guy, but some of my closest friends now, like we it's like almost like a competition about like who made the most ridiculously simple meal that was actually really good, right? Like I
love that.
One of my friends. Yeah. He's back in Chicago, will take pictures of his sweet potatoes and avocados and whatever protein source he has, his chicken thighs mostly. And like, he's like, dude, I finally got my second air fryer. So now I can make all of these things at once. I'm so happy. I'm like, you're just a different breed of weird, dude.
Yeah, it's funny, man. It's awesome.
But it's awesome. And I love seeing that because it pushes, we'll push each other in that direction. And not even as a competition, as like a, dude, that's awesome. I'm like super proud of you.
Yeah.
And
the validation standpoint.
Oh my God. And it's like, hey, I'm doing this and somebody's in doing it with me. And, we're very excited for one another. And when stuff happens on the south end, it's like, no, you'll be okay. Like, remember what we've been doing for the last decade or so. Yeah. Right. And it's like, okay, you need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and get back out.
You jump off a cliff.
And exactly. And God, I've seen this a million times that like you're the amalgamation of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
It's totally. Like, choose wisely.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. I think I heard the same thing with like younger career development times. Mm-hmm. It was like, you're going to be 5 years from now, whoever your direct supervisor is, you're going to be them. Yeah. Do you like that? Is that cool? Like, do you want to be that person? Like, no. Yeah. Like, you got to change your environment.
I mean,
it seems like.
I remember when I was doing my cardiovascular research, and the guy who I worked for, he's like one of the giants in cardiovascular research. He's the nicest guy you could ever imagine. And he's like so smart. And I'm like, that's the kind of guy I want to be. Yeah, there you go. Like I want to be able to take anybody in any circumstance and have them feel welcome around me and help guide them to where they want to go. And this guy he's been doing this stuff for, I don't know, he's got to be in his mid 70s now. And he's like, you talk to him on the phone, he's like, I don't know how old this guy is. He could be 30. I have no idea. Right. And he's still the same guy that he was forever ago. And like, that's the kind of guy I want to be. Right. And that just kind of stuck with me. And I've always had great attendings. Internal medicine is like known for people like that are nice and very well rounded, because you kind of have to have this like sort of broad focus in medicine. And that's like, okay, cool. I got a chance to kind of like coast on a lot of these people as I was in my training.
Yeah.
But yeah, you find somebody that's like, yeah, you know what, that stuck and I would like to do that more.
Yeah.
And the more you think about it, the more you become that.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming in. We'll have to do round 2 and talk more about other non-life biohacks that aren't similar. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming in, man. If people want to reach out to you and ask you some questions, get some insights or anything, or feel like they want to work with you, what's the best way they can reach out?
My Instagram is dr.mike_MD. Search for me. It's like Dr. Mike Herring, Herring, like the fish. And that's probably the best way to get in contact with me. And all my information's up there.
Cool. Awesome, man. And if y'all ever want to reach out to us, we're always open to suggestions and comments, concerns, conflicting opinions too for podcast topics, or if you have any issues or questions for us as physical therapists, you can always reach out to us at team@athleterc.com or just our phone number at 561-899-8725. And thanks again, man, for coming in. We'll have you in again for sure.
Yeah.
And we'll catch y'all next time.